This on so it doesn't sound funny. There. This is research I've done with Dr. Beasley again, and also Julie Howe over in Auburn University. You know, peanuts, they fix nitrogen, good scavengers of P and K, and even manganese and sulfur. Keep your pH and micronutrient levels in the right shape. Even if they're not, we can spray those. So really, when it comes down to fertilizing the peanut, it all comes down to calcium. And you have to have soluble calcium right in that pegging zone, top 3 inches, to both solubilize the calcium source and get it into the peanut. You can have all the calcium in the world in that top 3 inches, and if you don't have the water to dissolve this calcium and get it into the peanut, you're going to have problems. You're going to have pops, pod rot, black heart, and you know, calcium is also critical, super critical to the germination of a peanut seed. So any peanuts grown for seed, we still have the automatic recommendation, 1,000 pounds of gypsum at bloom time, regardless of how high your calcium levels are. We've had questions over the years whether you still need to put it on. Yes, you do. It's that important, okay? It might be kind of like insurance, but again, it's just not something to mess with. So we've done the research, and I've been here before. You know, initially, as was mentioned, we started out when we shifted from small seeded to large seeded. We looked at rate is what we initially started on. And after 3 years of data, 14 site years, Georgia, Alabama, believe it or not, really, and again, thanks to the National Peanut Board for funding this research, they really don't need it more and more often. It's just more important. We really thought we were going to have to change our extension recommendations, but we did not. They still hold. But I tell people we were probably getting away with some things on calcium on Georgia Green that you don't get away with something on a large seeded like an 06G. Now, if we shift back to a smaller seeded, we're still going to be good. But as far as rate, that 1,000 pound of gypsum, if you need it, is good, and that's the rate to use on peanuts being produced for seed. So I really could have done my whole 5 minutes just using this slide right here, because now what we've shifted to is, again, how to provide calcium to the peanut, and you're looking at source and timing. And you think it's pretty simple, gypsum, right? Well, we also had the lime method come on board probably over 15 years ago now. And now the new kid on the block is we're looking at putting things like calcium chloride through the pivot. And basically, if you look at these sources and how we use them, it all comes back to this slide here. Across the top, you see it all has to do with solubility. And if you start on the left top, and something we have a tendency to forget, but you know, soil test calcium is a source. It's not something we apply, but it builds up when we apply things. It's the least soluble of them. But again, that's the reason why, again, if you're not growing for peanuts for seed, as long as you have more than 500 pounds of calcium, soil test calcium in the pegging zone, especially in irrigated land, you're probably not going to see a response to gypsum. Now, if you want to put it on as insurance, I'm not going to stop you. It's that important again. But soil test calcium is the least soluble of the sources. Next is calcium carbonate or lime. All right, and the calcium in lime is less soluble than the next one to the right, calcium sulfate, which is gypsum. Okay, and that is why, since the calcium in lime is less soluble than the calcium in gypsum, if you use the lime method, you need to put it on at planting.